Brilliant. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today for our first CMO Circle webinar of October. And who better to kick us off than Ugo and Danny on this very relevant topic on Notion. So loads of people were asking in the community, how do I make the most of it? And it just so happens that we have two super users who have very generously agreed to come and share their tips and tricks and some basics, I think, for people like me on how to make the most of Notion and what to use it for and perhaps what not to use it for. We also have our very own CMO Circle James, who is in charge of the CMO Circle Notion page. I am very bad at using it. So James can also give us a quick update on how we're using it as well. So over to Ugo and Danny.
Hi, guys. First, brief intro, VP Marketing, as many of you. I am in love with Notion and what it does, so hopefully I can help transmit some of the passion. Nice to meet you all. Danny?
Hey, Danny Denhard. A lot of you know me. I am currently going through all the requests for the Notion board. I'm a consultant advisor and coach. So Notion is something that I have a love for, but also appreciate how people struggle with it.
Right, so Danny and I will walk you through a structure that we both prepared separately, but it should integrate quite nicely. So I'll get started, and then we'll hand it over to Danny. It looks like sharing is not turned on, Nicola or James. Can you enable it, please?
Yeah, leave that with me.
Yeah. Well, in the meantime, I'll start. I was looking through the survey, and it looks like the insights here are a bit of a sense of being overwhelmed by the complexity. Someone that uses it is looking for inspiration, best practices. There are other comments looking at, what is this Notion? Is it more than a glorified note-taking tool, was one of the expressions. And then someone as a solo operator was asking, how do I make the most of it to plan and execute on projects? So it's quite varied, and we both decided to start from the very basics and then move into more of the advanced and bring this thing into light with some real examples. Am I okay to present now, James? Yeah, should be.
Should be.
Okay. Right, Nicola, you can tell me if there's questions in the chat, right? Because I won't be able to see it. Everyone can see the screen, make the most of Notion.
Yep.
Right, so these are the insights on the survey. If there's anything else you want to cover, please let me know in comments and chat. I structured the session on a few key elements here. How you can think about it, some basics and cool stuff, and then we'll go into more advanced, look at how databases work and some real use cases to hopefully bring it to light. And Danny has a lot of experience with other leaders working in as fractionals at other companies, so he can cover also what he's saying to companies, how to use it, how not to use it. So the first bit is a bit weird. I was thinking, when I started using Notion, I was confused, as many of you may be. And I wish someone told me this thing. And I'm just going to cover it with 4 images. As we're all marketers, we'll start with something a little bit strange. So hopefully that will populate your memory. So the first thing is that everything in Notion is a block. So let this sit with you for a second. It will become clear in a few minutes. It's not like Word or Excel and so on. Like Excel has cells, Notion has blocks. So imagine, keep that in your head, and then we'll go through why that it matters and what it means. Then slash, for anyone that remembers him, is your friend. So at any time in Notion, if you're figuring out how to do something, you just press the slash and something will populate that will help you. So remember that. We'll go through it in a second. The other thing is that through these little dots that you'll see, everything can be transformed. So a block can become something else. It's text, it can become an image, it can become a link, it can become a page, which is weird at first, but it will become a little bit clearer as we go through. So remember that everything can be transformed. And the other thing is that everything is nested within Notion. It's like having a bit of a World Wide Web within your application. So to notice and to help yourself when you're feeling a little bit lost, think about breadcrumbs, about where you are in the structure of Notion. And that is visible here at the top. So I just want to give you this quick info to see how in practice Notion works. The first bit about basic functionality, when you're on Notion, you open up, effectively, you build your instance and you open up a page. And that page is going to look very similar to a word processing tool where you can start typing anything. And then you notice that this bit here has a few little dots. So this is now a block that I can move around within a page wherever I want. And I can transform it into something, it can be a heading or it can become a call out for something, right? So think about the structure of Notion built by developers as built by these blocks that can be moved around and can become something else with time. So, sorry, is there a question? No, it's just noise. Okay, so what you can do is as you start typing, you can do the very basic things if you want to use it as a Notion, as a note-taking tools. It has a lot of power in terms of formatting and customization. So your first attempt is probably start typing something, make it structured, as in you build your formatting structure. You can build a to-do list. You just press /to-do, and it will start populating a to-do list. So I can do something and something else. As you press enter, this to-do list will populate and you can cross things off. So the very basic level has a few little neat things that you can do. You can build your bullet points, write down lists as you would do with any other note-taking tools. And then there are a few things that are different versus what you'll see in something like a word processor. One of them is a toggle. So you can build a toggle that contains some information inside it. And that information is going to be nicely nested inside your page. So potentially this could be, I could build a toggle by pressing /toggle, and I can say this is methodology. So potentially no one wants to read about the methodology, but I just put it here. If you want to read about what's in here, it's going to be contained. And if I give you a document as part of my work where I want to cover methodology or some notes, I can just nest it quite nicely in there. You can build simple tables, again, /, as I told you, press the first few letters, /t, you'll find all the things you can do, table, and operate with the table. Clearly, all the things that you can do, word processor, change font, color, size, and then anything else is really quickly available. And the nice thing is that you can write something, whatever that is, and then after you have typed anything, you can modify it and just turn it into a list of things to do. Or you want to turn this into pages, and every one of them is going to be a page. So that's why thinking about this as blocks that can be transformed is helpful, because everything in here is effectively now a block that I can move around, whether it's a bullet point or a page. I can move around it and I can move things inside of each other. So I can move a block within a block, and then all of a sudden this thing is going to be nested in here. This text is nested in the page of basic functionality. Everyone with me so far on the basics? I see a few people nodding. Interrupt me if there's any. Okay, great. So then to figure out how to do things is, it's pretty easy. You just / and start playing. The easier thing to do, the thing that I would recommend anyone that has never used Notion to do, is copy a bunch of text or start writing a bunch of text and just play with it. Like if it's a game, you can build a page, a to-do list, or anything else. Then the cool thing about Notion is that it has created a lot of other ways to display this data. That could be a way to display an idea, make a point across, build a quote, and then everything can be commented and tagged. So it's a great tool for collaboration and for a pre-read, as an example. In my experience, when I was at Triptease, we use these for all pre-read and information. So if I had a thesis or a business case, I would build it in here, have all my data, and then people start collaborating on that page, similarly to what you would do with a Google Doc, but with significantly more functionality, as we'll see in a second. It supports code, equations, and you can figure out things easily. If you want to change something, it's also easy to just select it and then follow the menu to figure out whether you want to change the text or enter an hyperlink and all of that. So even as a basic note-taking tool, or if you want to journal, if you want to write your thoughts or use it as a collection of your knowledge, it is really powerful. That's what I do when I listen to a podcast. I write down some notes, I paste screenshots, and I do anything else. And I will do it on a page. The other thing is that it interacts really easily with the screenshot. So I can take a screenshot or other images. I can post it. I can post an image of this in here. And this itself is now, as it finishes loading, is now a block that I can put inside a page or somewhere else. Once you get a bit more sophisticated, you learn a lot of shortcuts. You can modify any text by just pressing a few buttons. I'm doing this without you being able to see what I'm doing. Oops, sorry. And it becomes really fast. And then you can customize this layout by pressing the three dots here and follow the instruction. You can have small text, change the font, use table of contents that will populate here, which is really handy. It's already built. If you have a big page with a lot of notes, this is going to be following you. And then you can share it very easily. This page could, in a couple of buttons, become a website. So you can press share it with a bunch of people, but also publish it on the web. And when you press publish, it's going to give you a Notion URL. Let's say you want to build a proposal for one of your clients, or something for a friend. You just publish it, and all of a sudden this link is going to be active for anyone that wants to see it. I don't need to be logged in. I'm going to be part of notion.site, and this page is now on the web. So effectively, it could be your microsite or a pitch deck or something of that sort. And then inserting stuff is pretty neat and easily, because if you post a link, it will ask you to use a smart preview, and anything you hover is a rich media preview of what you posted. LinkedIn is an example, but also a YouTube video that can be watched within it. So that's the very basic of how to use a Notion page and how to customize it and format it. Any questions so far? No?
One question, which is, how does it compare with Confluence? We don't necessarily need to answer that now, but
yeah, I haven't used Confluence at length, but I think I used it once and it was quite similar. They're in a similar space, but I wouldn't be able to tell you the exact, feature by feature comparison. Maybe Danny, you've used Confluence?
Yeah, I'd say Confluence is it is very similar. I'd say Notion they've really thought about the different use cases, as opposed to Confluence is probably more for product dev and engineer teams, and then obviously marketeers and product marketers have sort of come across to it. I'd say that Notion is a little bit more user friendly once you get onto it, and you can bring people into play with it a little bit more easily. So you can share it more widely, or you can have very specific use cases when sharing that. So I would say Notion is a little bit more user friendly and has more capabilities outside of just the Confluence and Atlassian ecosystem.
Danny, is it also in terms of pricing? Does Confluence have a free version like Notion does? I'm just thinking, is Notion also more cost effective?
I don't know the exact, I wouldn't know the exact answer to that. I would say Notion is more team friendly, so it does scale bums on seats from pricing. I don't know many people who would play solo with like a Confluence or an Atlassian product, apart from maybe Trello.
Okay, thank you.
It's difficult to beat the free tier of Notion, though. All of what I'm showing you now, I'm not paying for. There are some advanced features that you'd use in a team, but their freemium version is really, really good for solopreneurs or anyone that is trying to manage any project or their life. Then as you get the hang of the basic stuff, I thought I would show some things that I personally find cool. I don't know if you will, but we'll see that. One of the things is that any date, if you use the @ is going to be, you can add any date inside a document and modify that date, and it's going to be dynamically changed depending on when anyone reads the document. So if I pick October 11th, it's just the date, but if I do the 4th, it just says Friday. And next week, it's going to tell me last Friday. So for team meetings and anything of that sort, it's quite nice to have dates and alerts that can be customized depending on and be kept alive depending on when people use the tool. And you can use this to tag people that you know, or also set reminders. So in a project board or in something else, you can say, remind me about this point tomorrow at 9, and Notion will remind you at that time. Everything, remember I told you about blocks before, but everything can be referred to and pasted just like in an open web to each other. And when you see a page that has this little arrow, it means that you just refer to that page. So I can embed something without that being there, but with a custom imagery. And the content can be synced across multiple pages while retaining one single source of truth. To make sure that this is clear, I've inserted this content here. This is what I have to do tomorrow. And I've inserted it here as original, but also inside this page. So if inside this page, I add another to-do list, 3, 4, or 5, when I go back here, it's gonna be populated. So this is really great if you want to keep a single source of truth somewhere, but that repository of knowledge, let's call it FAQs or answers to some questions. You can just copy the answer to an FAQ from one place to the other, but keep a single repository of all your FAQs somewhere without having to do version control, updates, and so on. And then a lot of rich previews will be auto-updated. I didn't connect it to Slack because for this I will have to pay. But once you paste the link to a message in Slack, that thread is gonna open in Notion, so you can see whether there are responses to a single conversation, similar to a Trello board. And then docs, I took this from the CMO Circle page, actually. Docs can be embedded PDFs inside here, and they are a block like everything else, that you can enlarge it, make it smaller, or move it like you would move anything else. So for a deep reading experience, again, pre-reads and stuff like that, it's really powerful. And then the other thing, AI now is everywhere. If you type twice the space bar, it will ask you to suggest something for the AI, and it's embedded within Notion as well. So I asked them to write a sonnet about the CMO circle. This is what I got. And it can build also a flowchart. So this is how you become a CMO according to Notion AI. It's quite convenient because you're typing, you're working on a document, you can say, okay, correct this bit or make it sound better, more professional, so on and so forth. And the other cool app that I found is a web clipper, where I could go to the BBC website, open up a piece of news. Sorry, this is all depressing, but I'll just put something like this. Press a button here to save this to my page. And I can, this is now in Notion inside cool stuff, and it can act as a clipper, and it contains, look, it just made me a little article, all the text that was part of the article that I can read for later. So you could be on a competitor's website or something like that, and you want to tag things and add it to your repository of knowledge, you can do it with a single click. There are a lot of these integrations, and again, once you become a little bit more familiar with the tool, you can use it very, very easily. Any questions before I move on to more advanced stuff? No?
All good?
Yeah, great. Then
We're ready for advanced.
the bit that people use this mostly for, before I open to not distract, is effectively managed by using a database structure. So if you want to think about managing complex projects, so anything that has an owner, a deadline, and so on, that requires a database. And that's why I personally find Notion incredibly powerful, because you can build within a page, again, with the slash button, you can build a database. I built one as an example, and a database is effectively just a repository of knowledge to organize information. It has the information listed in a standard way, but then that information can be diced, cut, filtered, sorted in many, many ways. So this is just an example. I just put 4 names here into a database, and the way you build a database is just again /database in line, and you have a new database happening on your page. And that's when the intro is relevant. Every part of this database is another block that is nested within it. So effectively, I have a database with name, job title, some notes, the date when I joined. And if I click, this is a page that belongs inside this database. That's where the breadcrumbs is relevant. Okay, so once I'm here, I can then play with any view. I can add a person. So I see Catherine, I see your name first here. So I can add Catherine here and add some information in here. And all of it is going to be populated in all of the databases that refer to this. Why is this relevant? You can have a people board that will contain, like the pictures, the job titles. This is what I've done. So this could be your repository of all the roles. It could be your org chart within Notion. You can have things listed in a list containing only information that you want and that you need. Or you can have a board that filters and separates this information by a certain amount of criteria. Any one of this information, then once it's populated there, becomes a source of truth, and you can link this database to any other pages. It's going to become incredibly clear once we go through the use cases in a minute. That allows you to do project management. So this is what I could have been doing yesterday, so I need to prepare the Notion board. As part of it is figuring out what to talk about, write it down, create something. I need to run the training and so on. And all of this in a team could be assigned to you, to other people in the team, and you can use calculations. Won't go through that, it's a bit complex, but you can use calculations to figure out how much of it is done, how much is to be completed, what is overrunning. And once you have this, you can build easily, it's pre-built, a Kanban board and a timeline on all these different projects with dependencies. So I know that if I don't prepare it, I can't run the training. So if I move this here, it's going to move the date of another dependent task. So there are a lot of these rules that you can set in your project management board, whether it's you as a solo operator or you're doing it with the team where you're assigning people to something and you want to create a task for someone in your team. And you want to visualize with someone else in the leadership team and so on, that there's a dependency. So you're waiting for point 1 to be completed before point 2 can be done. Then last bit before we make it more tangible, and I hand it over to Danny in a second, is that once again you get the hang of these databases, you can connect them and it becomes really incredibly powerful. So you could have a list of names here in the table, but I then connected a completely different database with trainings that were running. And through a connection, I can just assign these names. So I say, like I'm doing, these are on one table, I have the people, on the other table, I have the trainings and the actions with estimated hours. Once I connected these two, I can, if there's a new person joining the team, like I had here, Catherine, her name is gonna appear here. So I can assign something without having to recreate it. And the interesting bit is that then in your database, you'll have, you can sum up, let's say, the hours needed for each people to do their job. So it's a bit complex at first, especially if you haven't run it. But the good news is that there are a lot of free resources that I took some examples for you they can start from. And they're almost all in this website. You can just search for Notion templates, filtered by category. You can find a lot of them. I can send the link of this in the chat in a second. And I've taken a few examples here. So let's say content calendar. This wasn't prepared by me, but you can start from here, and Notion has prepared, a series of campaigns and then the deliverables in a calendar down here. So potentially, if you don't want to create it from scratch, you can start from their example, see what this looks like for to do in progress and complete, and get some inspiration and personalize it without starting from scratch. There's, project and tasks is really, really powerful. So this is effectively very similar to what I used to do at Triptease when we had a core OKR. So OKR 1 would be to, let's say, do a rebranding and change our website to reflect that rebranding. Then there are tasks underneath. So I would monitor the big OKR as a percentage of tasks completed and assign. So this could be the OKRs, let's say research study, but then assign to people in the team their task to complete a section of their work. And once you've done it, you can cut and dice this data by, like, where are these tasks not started, in progress, done, or if you look at each project, how many are there, how many are done or in progress. So my main suggestion would be to just start, copy a bunch of stuff, play with it and learn. Meetings is probably the easiest where to start, because every meeting is a page within that database, again, the block inside a block, and you can write all your meeting notes in here, and they will be forever stored inside this page. Someone at the beginning, I don't remember who it was, but talked about a CRM. So there's an example of a CRM that is quite interesting. Not paying, I can't get the charts, which is one of their gated features. But if you don't have, I would not recommend it at a company level when you have thousands of clients. But if you are a fractional and let's say you're doing cold outreach to a bunch of prospects, this could very well work as a CRM. You have, all the people that are leads, qualified, proposal, and so on. And within lead, this can contain all your conversations. That's personally what I do with job hunting. I'm looking for a job, I have a conversation with a company, the company will have its own page. And inside its page, I can put multiple pages, charts, my screenshot, my research, and that everything is in there. And you can do it with your CRM just by saying, this person looks really warm. That's the value, and you can customize fields, do alerts, personalize it up to your, like your fantasy is really the limit. The last thing I'd say is that at Triptease, we also use it as a repository of knowledge, like our intranet, for policies and teams. So we had a workspace for marketing, one for sales and all of that. And when people wanted to know about vacation policy, this is a perfect example, it was listed there. So that was our source of truth, and every team would maintain their own page. I've spoken a lot. I want to hand it over to Danny with regards to how to get the most out of Notion.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah, of course.
I think everything you've shared, apart from the one area you confirmed was paid for, was free. Is there any really valuable additional features that you have to pay for? Or actually, do you think most people will be fine using the free version?
It depends on the use case. If you work in a B2B SaaS company as a full-time employee, you would definitely want to have the paid version. There's no chance you can stick with free. There are limitations with regards to sharing permissions, the size that a page can have. So once you start loading with document, you can hit a certain size. Then there's version history, which is another cool thing that is limited in here. So if you collaborate, you want to know in here how many people changed that page and when, So these are all my changes. And when you don't pay, you don't get access to a lot of version history. So you don't have all the data. Plus charts. Connecting to Slack is really powerful, because you can have anything that is updated there, populate a Slack channel, automated. I would say for most use cases as a, let's call it solopreneur, solo operator, or for your own personal life, there's probably no need to pay. But once you use it as a collaboration tool, coordinating 3-4 people in a team, you don't want to put your data in a free tier. That's my personal belief.
Yeah, thank you. That's super helpful. And I will now let you move over to Danny.
Yeah, if there's any question actually before, Matt.
Thanks, Hugo. That was awesome. My mind has just gone. I'm a very very early user, but I'm also a passionate G Suite user. I just wondered, what has Notion replaced in your life from a software, tools, etc. perspective?
Oh, great question. A lot. So I started writing on Notion because I think effectively it's a more multi-media experience versus what Google Docs allowed me to do. I think it definitely does not replace Google Sheets for my view. So for anything related to a complex set of data, let's say I want to analyze CPAs across campaigns, I would never do it on Notion. That's definitely not a good idea. But if I have a simple database of information that needs to have a lot of nesting within it, Notion is my go-to choice. Quite a few people don't know still how to use it. So if I'm collaborating on a brief with someone I've never met, let's say, and I need to collaborate on a document, and it's a long, let's say, an article, then Google Docs is still better in my view, because it's more people are used to using that tool. But for many use cases, this has, in my mind, replaced Google.
That's great. That was going to be my next question, actually, which is onboarding clients, partners, etc. Who, how easy is that in the to get them familiar with the tool so that you can not get caught up in treacle, basically?
You'll tell me after this session. Hopefully, if you do an hour like this, people will start feeling that it's really, like it's not something to be scared of in a way, and it doesn't. The learning curve for a basic use case is really quick. I think the bit that used to get even my team when I was in Triptease in a bit confused is building the infrastructure, like the database. But what I've done personally is build the infrastructure and then let them play with it, because you can lock a database, you could build it, and then they just add their task, and adding that task is trivially easy. So the part that takes time is figuring out, how do I structure this information for it to be useful, relevant, and all of that. And then once you do it, the people that work in a team will just do it really easily.
And last thing, sorry, Nicola, when you moved from your previous suite of tools, Google Docs, etc., to Notion, how easy was it to integrate or embed, your personal CRM, for example, that you might have had in a Google spreadsheet or something? Did you have to kind of recreate that in Notion, or were you able to just shift that content over nice and easily?
I haven't done anything like a CRM to be integrated. What I've done is I moved all my notes from Evernote that I used to use back in the day to here, and there's import tools that are really cool. So you can just go here and where is it? I think it's in settings, but I don't want to take too much time out of Danny. But there's import functionalities that are really straightforward, and I guess it depends. You have to figure that bit out if you have a lot of complexity, but they work on it a lot.
Thanks very much. That was all.
Sure.
I just had a really quick question, and it's for you and Danny, and it may be for the end, but you mentioned a Slack integration. I just wondered what integrations you both use and what you found most valuable.
Personally, I use the notifications for changes on a page. That was really helpful because we logged tickets for an event inside the Notion page. So when someone was populating something or a deal or any notes, Slack would notify us in a channel. That very important note needs to be dedicated only to that. Otherwise, it's a complete mess and it creates a lot of noise. And I didn't use Slack for anything else beside a rich preview of a thread or a conversation. So sometimes you bring that context into Notion to say, there's been a lot of debate in the company about topic 1, 2, 3 example, and Slack populates it. This is my thesis, this is what I would do, and so on. Danny, I don't know if you use it in a different way.
I've added a load of integrations onto the cheat sheet for everyone to click through and have a look through. So it's on dannydenhard.com/Notion CMO. I've just whacked it into the chat. A lot of the ways that I integrate into Slack is things like Google Drive or Box or Dropbox. So the use case for a lot of people is I need a home where all of my important documents are stored, or I need one like a hub so I can click on the most important onboarding documentation or a list of all the different sheets that we use. So a previous question was around how to skip or how to move across from Notion or move across from Drive or Sheets to Notion. A lot of people really struggle with that, and I'll go through. If you go to the pros and cons section on the cheat sheet I created, I'm applying access when it comes in. But basically, Notion is great for, like, if it's the pros and cons, it's great to centralize a view for your teams. It's great for a wiki with FAQs, like onboarding, having your own templates and spaces. It is really good for growth and product teams for documentation. So dev and eng can get involved. It's really good for scheduling reminders and formalizing ways of working with templates. The flip side is teams really do struggle with adapting to the existing tools without training. And something that a lot of people just really struggle with is if they're not onboarded to Notion, they just really, really struggle to go across to it and use it as their primary tool. Most teams won't use it instead of Google Docs. So if you work at a Google Docs company, so you're a startup, and actually historically they're on Microsoft, it's hard to get people across even to Google Docs. To get across to Notion is really difficult. So it actually needs training and reasons to move across. Tagging, OKR management are all really tricky. So I would say that if you're looking to manage that, you really do have to onboard people and like tell people over and over again what they need to do and what they don't need to do, and what they can get the benefits from it. But to dive into it a little bit more, what I tell a lot of people is, and especially companies, I have done it a handful of times with different companies, don't move to Notion if you don't have someone who's going to own it and truly understand it and train Notion itself and manage it as department leads. Because if your department lead doesn't use it, for instance, a company I worked with recently, all the department leads would use Google Drive and Google Docs. Everyone else would try and use Notion, and it broke the system. So there's some really intricate things that you can do with Notion. It's brilliant, but if someone doesn't own it and test and train people constantly, it's quite difficult. There's no silver bullet to be successful with Notion. And if you've got bad practices, so Nicola, I'm not picking on you, but something you said earlier on is you've got loads of Google Docs, but there's no sort of rhyme or reason, and there's no sort of architectural structure on it. Notion has to have structure, and I've given like a little breakdown. So you have to kind of think like a librarian to really get the most out of Notion. And I really do think if you understand information hierarchy, you'll really get Notion. If you don't understand sort of grandparent, parent, child, grandchild as like a navigation system, you're going to struggle a little bit with a filing system on Notion. So it does take a little while to get used to it and move across to it. If you want to get the most out of collaboration and cross-functional collaboration, things that Hugo showed is exactly what you can get out of it and what people really love about Notion. So you can tag other teams in, you can use it as updates, you can integrate loads of other tools into it. So it becomes the one source of truth. Whereas if you've got 100 different Google Docs, it's very complicated to get there. And very often no one knows if there's a new version of it, or Microsoft, someone saved as and done V2, V3, V4. So this is where you'll really get benefits from using Notion. You're probably still going to want to use Docs or Word, and you're definitely going to have to use Sheets. As Hugo said, Excel and Sheets aren't anywhere near being replaced into Notion. And very often you'll want to embed a sheet or a table, because databases is like a supercharged Google Sheet, but a lot of people struggle to use it. So you're going to have to work out the use case for it and when to use it, when not to. It's a little bit like when some people use Docs for email chains and other people won't. It's very similar to that. And a lot of the time you'll still need a chat tool as well. So I've worked in a fully remote company that's used Notion as like 80% of the home and hub, but there's still occasions where people will go off and use other tools. So if you're not like asynchronous and you not truly want to move to asynchronous communications, it's very difficult. Is sort of my my feedback on it. But there's a lot of toggles in that you can use. One thing that I'd say is this on the cheat sheet, there's huge amounts of resources. Hugo went through a load of brilliant use cases. There's a load on here that you can click through and read. I've embedded some videos so you can basically try it out as you go. And I really do highly recommend that you watch a lot of videos and you have your own go at it and you have a play, because the one thing Notion is great at is it being 100 things for 100 different people. What it can be doing, it can be quite tricky for other people. So a lot of people will use it as a life OS, for instance, whereas other people will simply use it as a, you know, as a docs tool or a database management system. I'm just trying to keep up with, see if there's any questions, but I can tell you a few of my use cases. Hugo kind of showed a lot of them. Creating homes and hubs for a lot of things. It's a much more visual way of having a better way of doing Google Sheets. A lot of people, I've shared it in this group before, but there's a clickable link on the must-read marketplace articles. So anything that's really important, I'll share it in there, and then I've just got it open to people that they can go in and click on it. At Just Given, I run my growth department fully through Notion, and a lot of other people in the business moved across to it post-acquisition. I used to run my podcast on it, which died a couple of years ago. That was fully run on Notion, between catching up with my co-host, talking points, any links and that we would do. We'd run the newsletter through it as well. I often use it as a Kanban or like a Kanban board, or keeping track of client work or leads that come through, exactly what you guys sort of showed. And then like a swipe file. So if you find great examples of things or great ads you want to replicate, it's a great hub for doing that as well. So as Hugo showed, you can copy and paste into it. You could do, if anyone's seeing now, you could do /image and you can upload an image straight to it, and you can just keep dropping images in, and then you can add commentary onto it. So it's really good for that. I'm just conscious of time and a bit Q&A. One question was around integrations. I've put all the best ones in there that I've used or have. So in an interim CGO role that I had, people would use Mixpanel and Amplitude, and they would embed all of the best and most important dashboards into one view, and you can just do it by copy and pasting a link, and as long as you've got permissions, you can open up to people. So it's super useful. But you know, if you're really hungry for automation, you can use Zapier, and if this then that. If any of you use Clay.earth, which is a personal CRM, you can integrate that in and embed in. Other cool use cases and tools that I would recommend looking at is Loom, which is you can record your screen and a short video. That's great to have feedback on articles. You can embed Canva in there as well. And then there's questions around Trello and Jira. So if you use Jira, Asana, or EverHour, things like that are task on product management, you can actually embed straight into Notion. So there's a lot in there that you can use. So the way I explain to most people is, if you want a home and hub that's going to do show a lot of the work that you're doing and show the most important information next to it, Notion's brilliant. If you want it for a wiki or like an internal knowledge center, it's brilliant. If you want to use it for a document hub, it is good, but most people struggle to come across to it. And the one takeaway I give everyone is, if you don't have an owner, I wouldn't jump across to it really quickly, because it's very difficult to get people who don't understand it across to Notion. But if you go through it, a lot of stuff that Hugo went through is in there. And also there's a brilliant listen right at the bottom, which is the Notion roadmap. It's great when they talk around their own branding, why they did it, and how they use it. So I'd highly recommend jumping in. So hopefully the cheat sheet will give you most of the questions. I'm conscious of everyone's time. Does anyone have any other questions or things that they want Hugo, or other people to answer? Hugo's got his hand up. So
Yeah, Hugo's got a question.
No, I just wanted to second what you said. needing an owner, but maybe the analogy I would make to a tool that you guys may be more familiar with is Slack. You know, it's so powerful, but if there's no discipline, it quickly becomes just a stream of consciousness and a lot of people just chatting on top of each other. And so a similar thing needs to happen with Notion. So if you're using it by yourself, it's a non-problem. So you'll be as disciplined as you want to be. You won't confuse yourself, hopefully, because you know where you structure the information and how. So play with it. If you want to bring it in a company, in your business, or in someone else's business, I think it needs a bit of time to consider what is Notion for, what is Slack for, what is Google Docs for. And we had that, I want to say, figured out at Triptease because it was really intentional and everyone was doing the same thing. But in other companies, it's not exactly like that. So it takes a bit of thinking, but I wouldn't be scared about bringing it up. Just don't start launching it and without a clear owner, as Danny has said. James.
Yeah, so quick one from me. So I'm not sure everyone here is a CMO Circle person, sorry, but I think the vast majority of you are. So shouts to the people that aren't, and obviously everyone else. You'll see that I built a CMO Circle Notion, nowhere near with the joie de vivre as some of the examples that these two have demonstrated. However, I hope that today has helped with some of the rationale around why I try to push it so much and also try to push it in the hands of the users. And I hope that kind of comes across. Again, it's a very basic version. Feel free to jump on and make it less basic. And again, and if you want to try out some of the stuff that you've learned today around some of those sections, feel free. But I hope that, you know, some of the brilliant examples and walkthroughs that these two have given can maybe help it resonate a bit more as to why I kind of keep pushing it so much. And in terms of why people jump on the group and sort of say like, oh, can anybody recommend a so-and-so? There's just a faster way, right? As soon as you onboard with Notion, it can just get you those answers. You can contribute, we can sort them a lot quicker. And I just hope that that resonated with people as to sort of why I've been talking about it so much. So that was it.
Oh, James, we're going to have all sorts of creative pages now as everyone goes in and experiments.
I mean, it's preferable, right? So I think we're scratching the surface, but I think one of the powers of the community is the combination of the knowledge, right? So we have very, very basic tables that are there for recommendations and stuff. These can be so much more advanced and ranked and tables and stuff. So it's just literally, I've done a bunch of it, but I've sort of been limited by time. But honestly, it can do so much more. And hopefully it will.
Everyone's homework, they have to go and create a really fun page on CMO Circle with something exciting on it. I think I might try and do an events calendar. Catherine, conscious you've got your hand up.
You're on mute, Catherine.
Yeah, just a quick question because we were talking about what it could replace. Could it replace a Monday?
It can. I'm going to be a little bit contentious. It's one of those tools that if you're really far down the line with Monday, it's going to take you a little while or probably a few months to migrate across. A lot of people I know who have done a move from Trello, from Monday, from any of the other sort of integrated tools, it takes them probably 6 weeks for everyone to come across and feel confident in it. I would say it is akin to if you move CRM system at a business, a lot of people, it takes them a long time, or it removes, there's a confident issue where people come across. So it will take them a long time to get confident with the tool.
Thank you.
Any more questions? I've got one, which I hope is okay to ask. What do you find it most valuable for in your personal life? Because I think it could probably add a bit more discipline and structure to my crazy, chaotic life. And I was just wondering how you find it most useful.
I personally use it for projects, and I use it for when I'm planning out a project or a bigger web system or like a co-build with people. I use it predominantly for that. When it comes to note taking, and that I still use Apple Notes, but that's because of just how my system is built. When I've used Notion and helped other people use it personally, a lot of people like it for structure, and a lot of people like it so They can have multiple different views and add in a lot of more like contact information or like a personal CRM. I know Hugo uses it a lot, so I'll let him jump in here. But I'd say what most people tend to love it for is trying to organize their life or have templates to continuously repeat and use.
I may be a bit on the extreme because I use it it has replaced a lot of tools for me. So I used it for buying a home 2 years ago, and every house had my own notes, was a page. And so they had the price, the agent that I met, like people call you and say like, hey, I'm Rob. What do you think? I'm like, Rob from where? So every time I received the call, I opened up that as a database and I figured out, okay, I saw this house on that date. And that's what I thought about it. I'm using it for interviews because you speak with a lot of people and it's pretty much your own little CRM to talk with the recruiters. And I remember who was really nice and who wasn't that I would tend to forget. But I use it also for projects. If I'm collaborating with a developer and bringing some ideas to life, then we have our Notion space where we have meeting notes, action items and all of that stuff. And then at work, it was clearly, I don't know, 50% of my day was spent on Notion in a way.
Wow. I've just remembered, I was asking someone for some tips for Mexico when I went there last year, and they shared a Notion page with all their top tips. And she said she gets asked so often, it was just so much easier to put it in there and just send it out. So I thought that was a brilliant idea, and I actually stole that one.
Yeah.
Gosh, James, yeah, migration.
Planning a trip is also a great use case for your own personal life.
A number of creators, like newsletter writers or book authors, actually use Notion now as well. And because it's like a rich markup, they can copy and paste into, say, Substack or Beehive and different tools like that. So there's thousands of different use cases. It's just if you want it to organize you just have to understand how the rails underneath it works.
Friend of mine shared his CV on Notion actually a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, "Oh wow, okay." And then obviously it looked really really cool actually, and obviously was able to then link out to his portfolio of work, etc., etc. So it was super impressive.
I haven't seen one of those. That's a great suggestion. Danny and Hugo, if there was a couple of things that you would suggest we go and do to keep this fresh and to play around with Notion, is there any homework that you would set to go and test out or to build that would be the most useful for us to start to upskill in this space?
We actually we talked about it yesterday. We prepared a little exercise that you could have done, but it's really just I would say not a specific suggestion first. Make yourself comfortable with it. Create a page that you don't care much about and start playing with the tool and build something and try to change it, turn it into something else and be familiar with how it works. As an exercise, it was mostly build a small Notion database with your to-do list for tomorrow. That could be a good start.
Okay. And if anyone feels brave, they can share their achievement in the CMO Circle WhatsApp. So we've got a bit of accountability there.
That would be fun.
Yeah. So we can see who's been most creative. Mine will be a checklist of 5 things and incredibly boring. You're getting a lot of wonderful feedback about this session. So are there any more questions before I just wrap up?
Or could I just ask one more? Danny
Cool.
shared his cheat sheet, which is brilliant. Hugo, are you able to share
I can do
the Notion page you sent us? You took us through. That would be brilliant.
I'll make it as a website so you can see how that works and you
Fantastic.
can play with it.
And can you put it on the CMO Circle Notion page, Hugo? So we've got a Notion for a Notion.
I don't know, how does that work?
Time to play around. Thank you so much, Danny and Hugo. I'm so grateful for all the work you put into setting this up. It's just amazing. I wasn't expecting anything like this. So really, really appreciate it. If people have specific questions or get stuck on homework, is it okay if they pop you a note?
Yeah, just maybe direct on WhatsApp because I may lose some of those messages on CMO Circle. But yes.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. I think it's going to be hard to beat this session in terms of practical tips for a long time. So, well, everyone,
have a good rest
have a lovely rest of the day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.